So first I want to welcome David, who I first met. I was telling him I met him when I was 19. I'm 45 now. And when I first met Brother David, I said, are you Brother David? Are you Brother David? And it was in the hall of Esalen. And he looked at me and he said, yes, I'm David. And I had read your book, Gratefulness, The Heart of Prayer. And I said, I want to talk to you. I want to meet you. I want to spend time with you. And so we went up to the Hermitage. I had all these questions on my mind. And we're going for a walk around the Hermitage. And I said, well, so what do you think the meaning of life is? And he says, look at this beautiful tree over here, Soren. This isn't a great tree? And I'd ask another question. He's like, look at this little bug. We're walking across the path. Isn't it a beautiful bug? And I had all these questions, and I realized he was answering all my questions in a way that I completely didn't know. So it's just an honor to have you. And then this panel kind of emerged because I just so value and appreciate each of your work. So I thought we would actually begin a little bit by kind of talking about your individual work and then kind of explore the shared topic of a compassionate and a connected world. So I thought maybe, Sharon, we could start with your work, which I know you've written one book on compassion, and that now you also have a focus on how that applies to the work world. Mm-hmm. So I thought if you could share a little bit about how that is showing up in your life, that would be wonderful.
Well, I wrote a book called Loving Kindness, actually, and it came out in 1995, and it was a description of that particular methodology of practice. And since then, of course, I teach retreats, I teach workshops, I have the opportunity to meet all kinds of people. And when I wrote a book a few years ago called Real Happiness, and people began blogging on my website about their experience, I just got this tremendous sense of the variety of people who were undertaking meditation practice. Because the people writing in were firefighters and an undercover policewoman and tech entrepreneurs and CEOs and special ed teachers and hospice nurses, and it was this tremendous sense of the scope of people who were drawn to practice and who were struggling with this issue of compassion as well, very particularly at work, like how to have a seamless life, how to be of one piece, how to have your deepest values manifest at work. And in addition to that, I've been involved in programs bringing tools like meditation to domestic violence shelter workers and international humanitarian aid workers, and the question of resiliency is so powerful because it's not a question of just having compassion, but which they have in plenty, but compassion for oneself as well as for others, and compassion for in balance with recognition of kind of the bigger picture of life, that we're not always in charge, if ever in charge of how things are going to unfold. So how do we pour our hearts into something and care and do the best we can and have a kind of spaciousness around that? So those are the most powerful questions that I grapple with through the vehicle of all these people who come to me. And so that's sort of where I've moved to.
Yeah, okay, excellent. So it's less about how to do that on a meditation cushion, and it's more about how to bring that into different facets of life.
Yeah, I mean, I believe in the meditation cushion, I should say, very strongly. In that, I know for me, in my own life, in my own mind, a lot of these great tools would probably remain theoretical if I didn't have a very steady kind of practice, because we've always said mindfulness is not hard to do, it's very hard to remember. And so how do you remember when you're at work and there's a contentious meeting going on and tempers are flaring and anxiety is raising, or you see this seemingly intractable problem or system and you don't know what to do, and you don't have to open up a closet door and pull out all this equipment and sit down cross-legged and look weird. But you could be breathing, right? You could be resting your attention on the breath. That's what you have been using in your, say, daily practice to come back to yourself, to come back to the moment. And so it's right there for us if we remember.
Great, thank you. Kristen, do you want to share a little bit about your work? And I know part of what we talked about before this panel was the emphasis you've placed on the difference between self-esteem and self-compassion and the role of self-compassion in this.
Yeah, okay. So my journey was first practicing mindfulness meditation and compassion meditation. And I have to say, Sharon's book, Loving Kindness, was hugely pivotal in my journey. And for me, the big mind opener was the fact that we could be compassionate to ourselves as well as others. It was actually a good thing to try to do. So I started practicing in my personal life, and it made a huge difference. And then I did 2 years of postdoctoral study with a leading self-esteem researcher, and started getting familiar with the research on the downsides of self-esteem. Things like we all need to be special and above average to feel good about ourselves, social comparison. Bullying starts partly as a quest for high self-esteem. It's contingent, it's there for us when we succeed, but it deserts us when we fail. And then in my personal life, I was really getting in touch with this inner friend, this inner supportive, compassionate self that was helping me through a lot of difficult times. So I decided to conduct research on it. I read books like, John's book, Wherever You Go, There You Are, Living Kindness, Path with Heart, and I came up with a definition, what I felt was a definition based on my readings and a scale to measure it, and there you go.
Okay.
So,
And the difference between self-compassion and self-esteem, how would you define that?
So self-esteem is a global evaluation of self-worth. It's taking all your attributes and your behaviors and summing it up in a box labeled good or bad or somewhere in between. Self-compassion doesn't involve self-evaluation at all. It's just a way of relating to yourself kindly. When you succeed, but especially when you fail. So it's really, it transcends the whole dimension of self-judgment and self-evaluation. It's just really a way of opening your heart to yourself.
And it's not based on what you do or accomplish or achieve or not achieve.
It's not based on what you do or what you achieve. It's just based on being a good, kind, supportive friend to yourself. Yeah.
And David, Brother David, I'm sorry. you ever since I was 19, you told me to call you David, but then I get a little self-conscious when I'm in front of a crowd because this world that we're living in that's increasingly digital connected. We have our phones, we have our ways of staying connected. A lot of people feel like there's great benefit in that, but we're also seeing a world where for example, the issue of bullying. You can send a text to somebody that's very mean and very rude, but you don't not see the sadness on that person's face when they receive it. And there can be communication where we don't see the facial expressions and all these different elements. So as we look at what it means to create a compassionate society, do you have any thoughts, it's for the panel, but I thought we'd start with Brother David, on what are some ways or mechanisms or practices or teachings that we can bring in such that human element is not lost or forgotten, and that the impact of both our kindness and also maybe our cruelty is seen and experienced?
Well, I think that this art that you have described, all these interactions in the digital world, it can be a real support for interaction on a heart level. That's what they are meant. That is why the way I see it, we live at a moment in which our civilization is really collapsing. Our civilization has lasted now for 8,000 years or so, and it was always, from the beginning, a pyramid of power, violence, oppression, exploitation. You look at any period in history, that's what it was, except for little islands like the Buddha Sangha, Christ's little community, St. Francis of Assisi, some communes and communities in our own time, more and more and more little islands. But the dominant structure is still that of a pyramid. And we owe it to the pyramid, so to say, in its last gasp, to have given us this network. Yeah. It's only a grid. It's not yet the live thing, but it's a grid. It's a grid for what Teilhard de Chardin calls the noosphere. There's the atmosphere, the vapors around the earth, there's the biosphere, the life around the earth, and the noosphere. That's the loving mind that surrounds the earth. And if we use, this is the challenge at this moment, will we use that grid to create a network of small communities rather than this pyramid, and create thereby a loving noosphere, a loving world, or will we miss this chance?
Yes,
And I passionately hope that we'll make it.
Yes. And what would be needed to increase those chances? I'm sure there's a lot of people here who share that vision with you and share that passion with you, and I know you have your own work through gratefulness.org and
What will we need to get there?
yeah, that would increase the chances.
Stop, look, go. No, I really mean it, on every level.
And do you feel that the society as we know it is crumbling to some extent, or it can no longer be sustained, that model?
Violence has brought itself to an end because we have enough weapons to kill the whole world many, many times over, and not only the humans, but animals and plants and everything. So that's come to an end. It can't go on. Oppression has come to an end because people are becoming aware of this oppression, which they were not so much before, and they will not tolerate it anymore. And greed and exploitation have come to an end because the gap between the rich and the poor has become so big that it can't go on any further. It just can't go on. So we have come to an end. And therefore, people create now small communities of nonviolence, of respect for one another, and of sharing. And those are the three important things. And there are literally millions of those little communities in the world, and now we have the opportunity to network among.
Beautiful.
And that will be the new world.
Sharon, what are your thoughts as you see a world that's becoming increasingly hyper-connected, and yet we know that while the external technologies get faster and cooler, that our society, there's no way for our society can continue to without the inner technologies also growing along with them. How are you witnessing this transformation?
Well, first I have to say that's the most hopeful perspective I've heard in a very long time. So thank you for that beautiful expression. I think in some ways, maybe most profoundly, our innermost problem is disconnection. We're disconnected from ourselves, we're disconnected from one another, we're certainly disconnected from this larger sense of life or nature, and yet we know we can weave connection together. I think the real absence of connection is despair, and I think that we know in that state that we don't know in that state necessarily, but there exists also, even in that state, the possibility of reweaving those threads of connection. And we do it with one another, so one thing we need is one another. We need the power of attention. We need to be able to look deeper inside ourselves and not get lost in today's problems and sense of futility or whatever it might be. We need to be able to look deeper at one another and recognize ourselves in one another. That's connection. And we need to be able to, I think, look deeper into problems. I remember totally when this Thai activist said to a group of us meeting with him, if you want to solve the problem of exploitation of children and the sex trade in children, look at Thai agricultural policy. Look deeper. Why are those farmers so hungry? Why are they selling their children? Just look deeper, look at causes and conditions, connections, look at the network. And when I think of that, the ways we can connect to ourselves and to one another, then I too get rather hopeful.
But I wonder, though, in the space with which people are receiving information on the internet. So, for example, if I'm on one of the social networks and I receive information about some exploitation or some tragedy, then I read the next thing, and then I read the next thing. I don't know if people are always in the space while the information is there about the exploitation to actually receive and feel that, and then know how to act from that place. So there's the information, but then it feels like there's also a capacity as humans to be able to feel and to know and to stop and to be. And possibly there's a combination in helping to support that.
Well, learning how to, and creating a culture where it's all right to stop, and a culture of some spaciousness is really essential as well.
How are you seeing things, Kristen? And I know you also have the insight of working as a professor and probably getting to interact with the younger generation more than some of us. What are you witnessing in terms of the changes the digital age is happening, and also this feeling of connection, disconnection, compassion, or lack of compassion?
Well, I'm not going to say anything new, which is, of course, the technology is neutral, and how you use it just depends. So, for instance, I get a lot of emails from women in Pakistan wanting to learn more about self-compassion, for instance, things that wouldn't have been at all possible without the internet. I think we need to shift away from our competitive, me first, me better than you society. I think the whole economy is based on being better, being competitive, and there's research showing that it's led to an epidemic of narcissism among young people, and of course that can get manifested with things like Facebook, self-presentation, concern with how I look to others, and it tends to be very comparative. So that's a downside, but on the other hand, it can create sangha. It can create a sense of, wow, you went through that too, or that's your story, here's my story. So I don't know the answer of how to use the internet or Facebook in a way that promotes that sense of common humanity, but it's, the potential is enormous. But it's going to take a conscious shift from this habit of social comparison, which can be so damaging.
Yeah, it's very challenging.
So,
Sometimes when people ask me about them, there actually have been deep moments I've had on Twitter where I've heard something. Actually, Tony Shea, who was up here yesterday, he once tweeted, and it stayed with me. He said the most powerful and difficult lesson I've ever learned is that the external world is simply a reflection of my inner world within. He tweeted that, and it stayed with me all this time. But I would say the vast majority of things that I've read online, I wouldn't necessarily call it a spiritual experience. And I often describe it a bit as like trying to give somebody a spiritual teaching as they're sprinting fast past you, like as fast as they can. So the good information there, but the mind and the body is going so fast that it's very difficult to receive. So I'm wondering, David, as we create this network, or we visualize this potential network that kind of shares deep, profound, connecting information, could it also connect us to ourselves and have pauses and have reflections and have ways in which we're actually encouraged not to just have knowledge, as you were speaking about earlier, but to have the wisdom element, which seems to me it requires some inner investigation. It can't be read in a little post necessarily. And so I'm curious if that was to exist, what might be some of the components or characteristics that we could put in that would support that?
Well, spirituality, formerly we called it religion, it has a bad name, but it is a very good term because it comes from religare, tying again the broken bonds. And it's the broken bonds to our true self, to one another, and to that transcendent actuality that is really life. Just life is that reality. And if we find any way of spiritual practice, we will find these ties again to ourselves, to all others, and to the ultimate. And every spiritual practice that I've come across, and I have been very privileged in coming to know very many through interreligious dialogue, they all have one goal, and that is to be in the present moment. and gratefulness, grateful living in that sense is equally a practice to bring people into the present moment, because stop, look, go, that's being in the present moment. And it gives you immediate results. You know, sitting on your pillow, you can sit for a long time. But if you start being grateful right now, you reap happiness this evening, you know. So that's a great advantage. But we have a great difficulty to face. You spoke about a new culture. Formerly, culture gave us a framework, a clear framework that had been practiced for thousands of years, and people accepted that, and they lived in it. That has broken down. We don't have that anymore. And we live in a period that I always compare to that period millions and millions of years ago, when nature invented the inner skeleton. See? Up to that time, all the animals that had skeletons had an outer skeleton, something like beetles or lobsters. Nothing inside, just goo. And all of a sudden, nature invented a spine. Now we could move with a spine. You can move, you can dance. You can't do that when you have a carapace like a lobster or a turtle or so. Turtles have spines. But anyway, we have to invent the inner spine, each one of us. And there we come back to this spirituality that ties us to our true self, to one another, and to all. That is our great task today.
Beautiful. And I'm curious, just Kristen and Sharon too, your thoughts in terms of there's an increasing number of people, it seems, that are showing up at conferences and events, and they're not necessarily coming through a religious doorway. They're coming through just more of a spiritual doorway. And I'm sure that has both pros and some cons, but what do you see this generation kind of seeking, and what do you feel like is the best kind of way of offering people who might say, I don't need to meditate, I'm just in the now all the time. Like, why do I need to do anything?
Good luck.
And the role of support in that, because essentially people should be able to, what's the role of a teacher or a tradition?
Well, I think that there's something incredibly beautiful, of course, about all these people showing up. And I think what they want is something real, not idealistic, not ideological, certainly, or dogmatic, but something real. And every day. And that's so important, because that's the revitalization of all these traditions and the next stage of all these traditions. It's like a revolution that's very much needed. And so I think it's terrific. The reason I said good luck in terms of I don't need to meditate, I'm just in the now, is because I think that's great, but is it real? For me, it would not be real. In fact, when I wanted to tell you that I've been talking a lot about gratitude these days and practicing gratitude as much as I can. And one thing I always say is that it actually doesn't come automatically to me. I think with my personal conditioning, my cultural conditioning, I'm much more likely, say, at the end of the day, to make a list of all the things I can complain about. And everyone that disappointed me and who was late, and then there's...
I think you might have a few people who share that tendency in the audience.
And for me to think, okay, what do I have to be grateful for is a stretch. It's like an intentional moving away from what I'm used to that actually takes sometimes a little bit of courage and actually makes for a truer picture of my day and a much more inclusive consciousness. So how many people can do all of this without some stretch?
Right.
Maybe not so very many.
I'm a long-term meditator, and so I absolutely believe in the power of meditation, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary. Just so, for instance, to go to some research, me and my colleague Chris have developed a program designed to teach self-compassion. And we found that equally predictive of gains in self-compassion was formal time on the cushion, sitting, but also informal practices like, putting your hand on your heart when you're stressed, or using kind, supportive, friendly language with yourself. We developed an intervention for college students, 3 sessions that didn't have any meditation at all, and it raised our self-compassion levels by 25%. So absolutely, tried and true method of brain training is meditation, but I would hate to say that if you don't meditate, there are no gains you can make. So, and I'm so curious about, could you put something onto Facebook, like you've got the like button, which kind of promotes self-esteem, social comparison. Could you have some other button that maybe promoted a sense of common humanity, or,
If there's people here who might be able to work on that.
Yeah.
It says, I feel connected to you, or there's a
Yeah, I
connection
feel connected, or
experience.
something like that. Just like me.
David, when I interviewed you 20 years ago, you said that many people look at a spiritual practice as like a train or a boat that gets you one place to another. And you said it's more like a boat that you have to row and work at and fix, and there's holes and there's different things.
Today I would say it's even more like walking on water.
You start with gratitude as the doorway. Would you say that would be true? And is there a quality that you think gratefulness opens us up to that's more powerful or more direct than the other qualities, or is it just kind of the doorway that you feel most inclined to share?
Well, it is a very revolutionary form of spirituality. For instance, it could revolutionize our whole economy. Think of the feeling when you are grateful. There are 2 phases to it. The first one is that something rises quietly in your heart, so that your heart fills with gratitude, And then comes the point when it overflows. And when it overflows, then it sparkles and makes a lot of noise, like water that overflows in a fountain. And then you are thankful. So first you are grateful, and then you are thankful. And that is where the joy comes in. Now, in our society, just at the moment when it wants to overflow and give you the joy, advertising comes. And tells you, wait a moment, there's a better model, or there's a bigger thing, or your neighbors have something else. And it doesn't overflow. So we make the vessel bigger and bigger, and the joy never comes. In societies in which they have very little, they are so joyful. We go there, we can't believe it, how joyful the people are with so little, because their vessel overflows so much sooner. So if we just stop and make the vessel a little smaller, not depriving ourselves of anything, but giving ourselves the joy that it can overflow, it will do something to advertising, it will do something to our economy, but it will give us a great deal of joy. But it takes courage.
Yeah, one of the things I hear from people in the tech world, which has become increasingly a tendency, is that when they slow down and are mindful, they're like, wow, I think I just tasted my food for the first time in a year. Because often the food is eaten right in front of the computer screen, and the sense of connection, mindfulness, but then also gratitude, because for once we have a taste of our food that we're present for. And that's actually, if you look at a lot of businesses and places, the food is down without any real awareness of the experience. So we're actually missing out on the experience. The natural pause.
Natural pause. I mean, I do want to broaden the sense of practice, like when I talk about meditation, I don't necessarily mean only sitting on a cushion, and being with your breath, but I'm fascinated by whatever practice, whether it's just like me, as somebody called out, or paying attention to somebody we usually look right through or ignore, and what it takes to take something that we might appreciate in the abstract and make it real. Like, that's the moment of alchemy for me, where we're not just saying, well, fine for the Buddha or ancient saints who lived a long time ago in another place, in another time. What about right now, and what about me? And I think that's an extraordinary field of exploration. Like, what is it in us that says, I want to claim this, I want to see what it's like from within?
David, you had said something about how life moving through us, you know, which I have a strong resonance with. What is life moving through us? So it's contacting some kind of deeper source beyond just our own mind of what we think we need to do. And it feels like a lot of your work is about that opening to this bigger life force. Would you say that that's
Well, life always wants fullness, and life always gives us always something positive. If we look back, even what we thought at the moment were terrible gifts of life turn out to be life-giving and new and wonderful. So life always gives us good things, and to have the courage to entrust ourselves to life and to ask at every present moment, what is it that life wants me to do? That is that stop, look, and what is it life wants to do, and do it.
Yeah.
And in this sense, again, technology and digital technology has enabled us to build this network for grateful living and to build a website that has way over 10,000 visitors every day, gratefulness.org, and we think of it as online support for offline living. And many little groups all over the world just come from South America and in China even. There are little groups of gratefulness that help one another practice gratefulness, and we can support it through this incredible grid that is purely technological.
Yeah, excellent. Kristen, how are you? Because what I'm particularly curious with you is also your interaction with the students and the younger generation. Are you seeing that they have interest in this? You teach a class on self-compassion. Does anybody attend the class?
Oh, yeah. It's big waiting lists. Yeah, I'm also very inspired by, there seems to be a desire for authenticity. I've seen among young people that, I don't think I was there when I was 20, a real thirst for authentic connecting, not in everyone, but in a lot of people, which gives me tremendous hope. So I do think the thirst is there. And another thing that gives me hope, is we've all been talking about, is we don't have to invent this. We don't have to, reinvent the wheel. The love, the mindfulness, the presence, the gratitude is already there. So we just have to remind ourselves to access what's already there. And it's possible that technology can be used to give us that constant reminder to open our hearts, to open our minds, to pause, to be grateful. So I actually am hopeful. And just maybe have to add, it is true about hierarchy existing for a long time, but I've had the privilege of spending a lot of time with the Bushmen, San hunter-gatherers in South Africa, who are the world's oldest culture, about 100,000 years old. They don't have hierarchy. They have gender equality. They have no set leaders. They cooperate. So I kind of feel like our genes evolved in that hunter-gatherer context. So we are actually designed to care. We're designed to be one with nature. And it wasn't really until agriculture came in and we had property and we had to defend that property that things started to go to hell in a handbasket, really. But our genes have evolved for caring, loving, mindful communities. So maybe we just need those little reminders that technology can perhaps give us.
Yeah, excellent. Well, because some people are here from the technology world, is there an invitation? And I know, David, you've been particularly active in gratefulness.org to expand. But there are also a lot of innovators, technology innovators, who are like, sure, tell me what to do. One is a potential button on Facebook, I guess, that expresses something. Justin, who's actually here, who was the kind of creator of the like button. I don't know if he's still here, but so who knows what could happen around that. But are there some intentions or visions that we could just put out as we end this panel? And if there isn't, that's fine too. There's no force. But if there is some invitation or that wants to be shared, please do so.
Well, I get approached so many times, say if I'm teaching in New York City, by people from all over the world. You know, I'm working in the Congo, I'm working here, I'm in Haiti, and it's so hard. I have no spiritual community. I really need that. And so, I mean, it's not going to be like it was long ago, where we all came together physically. It's going to be something else, and it will be many something elses, and I'm very excited about that.
Yeah. And that groups can get together without the in-person element, and they can have meaningful, deep.
Yeah.
Okay. David, is that what you're finding through your online network for offline living?
Yeah, that works very well.
Yeah.
We reach people in the whole world, and we can give them a message, and it's interactive. We have people network with one another. They help one another.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is why I'm very grateful to the digital age and all that it provides.
Great. Thank you all for this panel. It's deeply appreciated.
Thank you.